Welcome, everyone, to DEI After 5, the show that focuses on topics across diversity, equity, and inclusion with some of the brightest minds in the industry. Here's your hostess, inclusive culture curator and coach, Sacha Thompson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of DEI After 5. Okay, so if you have been listening, following for any time, you know that I've been really covering a lot of topics on, really thinking about if DEI goes away, what do we do, right? There has been this attack on this industry, this work. We are taking steps backwards in so many ways. And, not too long ago, I was part of a conversation where we talked about DEI needs a communications plan. Well, we are going to continue in that vein. And today we're going to talk about DEI needing a publicist. And who better to talk to about this than the DEI publicist, Christen Smiley. So I am so excited to have this conversation with her. Christen, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Sacha. I am thrilled to be here and have been a longtime fan of the show. So excited about the conversation.
Thank you so much. So for those that may not know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. So my name is Christen Smiley, and I am the DEI publicist. And by that, I mean I have a rich background in PR and communications that forayed my way into diversity, equity, and inclusion work. And one of the areas that I saw that really stood out for me was that connection between DEI, communications, PR, that entire vein. And so I decided to begin my own consulting business, LunarWorks Consulting, led by myself, the DEI publicist, to really help clients of any size and shape be able to really tackle that critical intersection.
And I love that. And so many of our guests, myself included, have marketing or a comms background. And so I love you coming from this perspective because, again, it talks about how this work, DEI, is not about HR only, right? It is a more holistic industry. And so when you talk about DEI needs a publicist and you are the DEI publicist, what does that mean? Because I think so many people might think, oh, we just need to change up a word here or there, but it's so much more than that. So can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So like you said, there's so much that's going on within DEI currently, right? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. We always like to break out the full meaning and breadth of those words. And by the DEI publicist, what I mean is really taking the industry of diversity, equity, and inclusion and applying to it the principles that you would a traditional PR campaign or publicist role, right? So that's going in and defining messaging that's going to resonate with specific audiences. They're going to help people better understand exactly what you mean by DEI, exactly what your company is doing with this work. Because oftentimes I find that people who aren't in the trenches with us, who've been doing this work for so long, kind of don't really understand. So there's employee resource groups or business resource groups, and we have a mission, but what does this all really mean? How does this impact my job? How does this impact the company? And so being able to really take a step back from that very high level view and thinking about it almost as a consumer, like as if your employees are your clients. How do you relay to them your diversity, equity, and inclusion goals and initiatives and programming in a way that they're able to digest it and then therefore support it and ideally become ambassadors for it? And likewise, how do you tell your customers and stakeholders that same message in a way that they're going to understand, that helps them understand how they support your DEI missions as well? And overall, that ecosystem will create really a backdrop for there to be a deep level of understanding and also then adoption of your DEI programs and initiatives because it's just that level of understanding there.
So as you were talking, there were a couple of things going through my mind, like absolutely knowing your audience, right? We have to know who we're speaking to, what resonates with them, what's important to them. But as I think about this attack that is happening, it is happening from folks that feel like DEI is about those people over there. It is not about me. right? And I'm gonna give the prime example. And this is why I'm like, oh my gosh, we just need a publicist. We need a comms plan. Part of me is just like, we just need to blow it up and start all over again. But I think about Governor Abbott in Texas, who is one of the strongest voices anti-DEI, right? We're taking it out of schools. Universities are being defunded. Those offices, folks went to work and they didn't have a job. Yet he's doing this from a wheelchair. Like, make it make sense for me, right? So, part of that tells me how DEI has been defined, at least in that frame of mind, or in that framework, doesn't include individuals with disabilities, right? And so how do we start to do some of that language massaging where people realize, oh, this does impact me or someone that I care about? Because again, using him as an example, he has a wife that is Latina.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So DEI isn't just about Black people. It is a more inclusive, holistic industry, right? And reference point. So talk to me about how we start to massage that language to get folks like him thinking, oh, I'm hurting myself in this process.
Right, exactly. So I'm so glad you brought this up, because there is so much conversation around, what is DEI? Who does it include? Whom is included? And unfortunately, the sort of stereotypical approach to DEI has framed it as it's for Black people and BIPOC people, and it doesn't really include anyone else, when that's actually not the case. And I think when we think about the messaging, it is breaking that messaging down so that people understand DEI impacts literally all of us. Because whether you're talking about a visible, diverse aspect of yourself or an invisible, diverse aspect of yourself, your socioeconomic background, your upbringing, where you came from, all of these things truly impact what DEI entails. It's not just about checking a box of saying we've hired this person and this person and this person. It's also about, once you get in that organization, what systems and policies need to be in place so you can do the best job that you're able to do with what you bring to the table. And there's so many things that come with that, right? So like you said, there's differently abled, there's neurodivergence, there are veterans, there are people who are caretakers of family members or elders in the home. There's so many different dynamics that go into DE&I besides the traditional, more visible, diverse aspects of our being. So when it comes to the messaging, it really is almost pointing it out and spelling it out. When we say diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, we mean this, and this is who we're talking to. And if you fall into any one of these categories, these are the ways that we are ensuring that our workplace is not only accessible, but equitable. And these are the programs we have in place should you need additional support. And should you not, that's absolutely fine too. We want you to know, though, that you have as much access and equity in this, and we are here to support you. And so when I think about that messaging, it really is almost honestly picking it apart and really saying, we mean this group, this group, this group, this group, and any who were not aforementioned. If you fall into a marginalized group, a historically marginalized group, you are also included. Help us know how we can also help you. So ideally, that messaging would not only resonate with employees and let them understand, like, oh, wait a minute, you might be talking about me. I fall in that category, I'm a first generation college grad, or, I'm an immigrant, whatever it may be, I fall into that category. And it's helpful for also folks who may not see themselves reflected to say, and hopefully feel comfortable enough and have the psychological safety to raise their hand and say, I belong to this group and we weren't included in this. Can we have a conversation on some needs that we have that would be incredibly helpful for us to be successful in the workplace? And so really, honestly, Sacha, is breaking it down bit by bit and really saying this is exactly what we mean, because unfortunately DEI has been co-opted from what it truly is to be something that is used in these attacks that we see continuing going on.
Yeah. You touched on something just now, which was kind of like the second part of where my mind went earlier, was, a lot of DEI work is focused on historically marginalized, right? Those that have been historically pushed to the margins, left out of whatever it is, not at the table, however we want to, talk about it or phrase it. But then we have those that are privileged in many ways, right? In almost every category that don't see themselves part of DEI because they may be a white cisgendered male, right? That is able-bodied, that is, all of the layers of privilege.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think of those groups, right, how do we then market or message to them that they are part of this, even when they have so many layers of privilege?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'm glad you asked that question as well. When I think about those groups, I think about really peeling back some additional layers because I have, in my past and in just in my present, honestly, just in conversations I've had with leaders and with colleagues, there is that question of, well, I kind of fit into these boxes that are, traditionally categorized as privilege, and I come from a lot of privilege. Where do I fit in this? And then we start to have deeper conversations. We start to have deeper conversations of their personal journeys. We have deeper conversations of who is in their family, who do they have proximity to? Because while we would love for everyone to have empathy and compassion, even if you don't feel connected to the group that you are, to a group that may be being oppressed and suffering, oftentimes it's that proximity that have people say, oh, wait a minute, I know someone, my neighbor or my cousin or my wife or, my spouse or, someone in my community falls in this category. And now all of a sudden it helps them humanize that person. And so what I have found is starting to peel back some of the layers and even honestly having conversations of saying, hey, you know what? In these categories, yes, you have an extreme amount of privilege. Privilege is something that we all have. Has there ever been a situation or have you ever been in any sort of scenario in which you didn't feel as though you had a privilege, in which you felt marginalized, in which you felt you were not in the majority? What was that like for you? And if you can tell me how that felt. And usually they can rattle off something. Now, is it as detrimental as some of the scenarios that historically marginalized folks face? Absolutely not. But the point of that conversation is for them to start to understand, okay, I understand what it feels like to not be in the accepted majority in a particular group and what that felt like for me. And this is what would have been helpful for me. And then you're able to flip that and say, okay, now let's turn that around and talk about how you can show up in your privilege to assist and help so that everyone gets a chance to feel as comfortable in this space as you do.
Absolutely. It's so funny. I often use the example of like, just remember when you were a kid and we were on the playground and, you had to pick teams. No one wanted to be the last one picked. Right. And so, what happened when you were the last one picked? Like, how did that feel? And I don't talk about the experience itself, but like, what was that feeling that you had? Imagine going to work with that feeling every single day. Right. And then, so, really in that kind of connects to that empathy. Absolutely. Or they might have had a child that has been left out. Right. And so even up to yesterday, I was having a conversation with someone about my first episode of DEI After 5, where Farah Harris was on. And she said, oftentimes it doesn't become dear to us until it's near to us. And so it's really tying into exactly what you were saying. Who's in your circle? What makes this important to you? And we often see it in the workplace, like, oh, she reminds me of my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
You can do that. You can expand that empathy to folks that don't remind you of your daughter, right? But you know what it feels like to be ostracized. You know what it feels like to be left out. You know what it feels like to be left off of an email several times, right? Intentional or not. And so I think making those connections is absolutely key. I also had a conversation with someone yesterday who said, I wasn't an advocate for the LGBTQ plus community until my brother came out. Mm. So again, it's that proximity.
Yeah.
Right. And then now it's just like, I can't help but be an advocate and ally in this space. Right. Mm-hmm. And now I can see things that I didn't necessarily see before because it wasn't in my sphere. But now that it is, and I'm hearing these stories, there's so much more that I can do. Right. And that's the beauty of this. So I appreciate you bringing that into this fold, because I think so many people are looking at DEI as, this isn't for me, this is for those folks over there. When in reality, if it's not impacting you directly, it's impacting you indirectly. Someone you love, someone you care about. when we start talking about neurodivergence, right? You're seeing more and more people getting diagnosed as adults in this space, right?
Mhm.
I actually feel like I need to get tested, but that's a whole other conversation.
Me too.
A whole other conversation. But there's so many people that are realizing like, oh, I just thought that I struggled in this area, or I just saw the world in a different way than everyone else, realizing that it is something that is diagnosed. And if they knew that in the workplace, how could things have been different?
Mhm.
Right. And so now when we're starting to talk about DEI and what, not that it's just programs, but that access piece that you spoke about as well, too. It's, do you have the resources that you need to help you be successful here? Or are we throwing more obstacles in your way because we don't understand, or we feel like we're being left out, and so therefore you should be left out?
Exactly. And I really appreciate that prospect of that proximity aspect. And again, we would love for that not to be the case. We would
Yeah.
love for people to be able to extend this empathy, but oftentimes it then becomes so real for people when it's like, oh, this is impacting, for the example you gave, my brother. So now you're learning the ins and outs, the challenges, the obstacles, and saying, wait a minute, this isn't right. And so ideally what DEI will do and what diversity, equity, inclusion does do, and I've seen it do, because I love to talk about the success stories as well.
Right.
I've seen it do is really help shape how people approach not only their work, but people in general. It helps you humanize people and understand that everyone has a different story and everyone has a different path, and that this journey that we're on, so that everyone has equitable access to be as successful as they want to be, in the organization, is incredibly important. And so I think that aspect, humanizing it and remembering that this work has always been about the people. It's always been about the people. It will always be about the people. Even as we go through conversations around the business case and these different things, which are very important to have, because there is, in fact, a business case, and there are, many studies out there that showcase the financial gains that, inclusive companies have. And also, not to forget that this still is very much about the people and the employees and the experience they have every day when they come into work, aiming to do the best job that they are able to do.
Yes. And I think, like the last few episodes, I've really been talking about, it's the humanity of it all, right? It is not just what we do at work. It is what we do at home. It is how we live our lives, because I'm a Black woman after 5 o'clock, right? And so there are certain things that I still experience because of that and the body that I am in. And so it's also understanding that we need to just live holistically, right? We want to be able to live holistically and not as parts of ourselves or what is deemed acceptable by certain aspects of society. I just want to be. And, I believe I've told the story before, but it just hit me so hard when, a woman who had transitioned and prior to transitioning served in the military. Right. And so fought for our freedoms, put at the time his life on the line, transitioned, and, is having a conversation with me and is saying, I am illegal in 2 states. And the power of that, it was like, put your life on the line. And then now you're fighting for your own freedoms. It just boggles my mind. And so to have that conversation with someone is about humanity. This has nothing to do with, what's happening in the workplace in that extent. This is about policies. This is about legislation. This is, how are you making human beings illegal?
Absolutely. And it's also, some aspects of really understanding that you don't also, one thing I also like to tell people is you don't know who you're in the room with.
Right.
Like you said, I am a Black woman after 5 o'clock every day, every single day. Now, one aspect of my identity that people don't always know by looking at me is that I'm also a member of the LGBTQIA+ community. So I've been in rooms where there have been comments made and things said because I was assumed to not be in that community. And I've turned around and not only been an advocate and self advocate for myself and also my community, but also reminded people that you don't know who you're in a room with. Do not assume that everything that you see is the entire story of someone, because it never is. And so you will often find yourselves in rooms, you might find yourself in conversations like this person found themselves with me, where I was not only able to educate them and to provide resources, but also, they had a definite foot and mouth moment. Where I, said, let them know the truth. And it wasn't a matter of, doing it for myself. It was more so doing it as a teaching moment for them, to let them know, again, you can't just go based on what you think you see, and your words have impact. And also your words have impact also based on your position and what impact you can have on people in the organization. And that's one of the things that I also have a lot of conversations about, is that we talk about, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion at companies. There's so much that falls on middle management. So you've got, a lot of buy-in at the very top, which is incredibly important. And then you've got a ton of buy-in right at the entry level and at more of the junior level employees are super excited. And then you've got middle management, which is really that sweet spot you've got to, really impact, because they have so much influence over who's able to participate and what gets filtered down from the top. And so one of the things that I also find incredibly important when it comes to being the DEI publicist and working with leaders is also working on that inclusive leadership aspect, where we're also talking about, in middle management, you may not consider yourself to be, but you are a leader, and you have a lot of influence on whether your team member can participate in that ERG activity or can take those volunteer hours. And likewise, you are also a filter for what's coming down from the top to align with senior management messaging around inclusion being incredibly important in the organization. And so I often have found that middle management group is also definitely a target audience that needs to be communicated with in a different way than you do senior leadership, and that you do entry level and junior level leadership, because they've kind of got, they've got some years in the game, they've got opinions, they've got experiences, and so it usually comes in and really, how do we shape and massage this messaging so it actually permeates to everyone.
And I love that. I do a lot of work in that middle layer, and part of it to the messaging that I use is, this is not an add-on, right? This is part of your job. And so how do we make it more intentionally a part of your job, so that it's like, oh, this is just another thing that I'm adding to my plate? No, let's just look at, you already have to do one-on-one meetings with your team. How do you make them more inclusive? How do you have those conversations? How do you mentor and coach in those moments, and giving people what they need versus what you think that they need? One. Two, how do you give them exactly what they need, and not, everyone gets the same thing, right? So it's these learning opportunities of equity versus equality and diversity, and all of those little things. And so I think it's so important that we talk about that influence of that middle layer, because so many of the voices that I hear are, I would love to do it, I just don't know what to do. And so it's giving them the guidance, giving them not even necessarily, actually in some instances I do give them the script, right? Like, this is what you could say, right? But it is empowering them to be part of this new narrative of what DEI is. The other thing that you touched on was the importance of understanding intersectionality. And it's so funny to me, because all of a sudden we stopped hearing that intersectionality and CRT were the boogeyman. Now it's DEI as the boogeyman, but that's a whole other conversation. But the importance of intersectionality and who we are and how we show up and the layers of who we are. And, just like in your situation, most people do not, they hear my voice and they're like, oh yeah, she's an American. And I've heard some things about immigrants, and I'm just like, really? Like, let's unpack what you just said, right? My family, I immigrated here as a toddler. I didn't get my US citizenship until 2016, right? And part of that was like, I want a certain president on my paperwork before we did a transition. So selfish of me a little bit, but I also kind of sit in those moments, just as you said, it's like there are opportunities to teach and learn, when I have the energy to do it. But you never know who's in the room, what the response is going to be, right? People may be adopted into families that don't look like them or don't have the same experiences as them, right? I've worked with a client one time who by appearance was Asian and her birth parents were Korean, but she was raised by an Irish Catholic family. And so she was like, culturally, I'm Irish Catholic, but people don't even get past the fact that I look Korean. She was like, I know nothing about Korean culture. And so just talking about that and unpacking that. And she was like, I don't consider myself a woman of color because that's not what I grew up in. And so it's the assumptions that people have and really taking the time to get to know folks. And then that's where the diversity comes in. Just because we're all in the same place doesn't mean we got there the same way, or all of these other things that we may have in common. There may be some other things that we absolutely don't have in common. And that's okay. And that's the part I think that, we really need to start to focus in on as part of this reimagining of DEI. It is okay that we are different. That is the beauty of this country and the tapestry, or whatever, however we want to say it. That's the beauty of this space. And so how do we honor that? And how do we cherish and celebrate that?
Exactly. I love that so much because I actually, I'm huge on intersectionality. We could have a conversation about it all day, all day. But I think it's so important, like you said, and one of the things that I stress and connect with people around, and when it comes to intersectionality, is that you don't have to choose just one. You never have to choose which identity you're going to, okay, what am I going to champion today? Or multiple truths can exist. You can absolutely be incredibly excited. For myself, I can be absolutely incredibly excited for International Women's Day to come around. And I can also still be frustrated at pay equity issues with Black women and what we earn versus our counterparts. Both and can exist. And so that's one of the things that I like to remind people when it comes to this work. There's going to be multiple truths often. And that's that part where it's like we get to explore our differences and it be okay. Multiple truths can exist at the same time. You can celebrate one identity and still be, advocating and fighting for aspects of another, and also being an ally for a completely different community. All of these things can exist at the same time. And I think one of the arguments that is taking hold for people when it comes to these attacks on DEI is about this aspect of it's either or, it's us versus them. It's if they have, then we don't have. And I don't remember anybody told me the size of the pie, but somebody lied. Like there is not this finite amount of,
but that's a remnant of supremacy culture, right? Like this what's the word? Binary, right? Black or white, yes or no.
Exactly.
We live as people in the gray. Like we as humans are very gray. And so that is, I absolutely agree. And that's part of what we need to unpack in this. Yes, both and. Yes, both can be true.
At the same time.
At the same time.
How about that?
Right? At the same time. And, I used the example of going to like an ERG gathering that I went to at work, and they had the Black employee group over here and the women over here. And I'm like, well, where am I supposed to go?
Exactly.
Like you're making me choose, but both are who I am. And so it's understanding that. So, Christen, we could talk about this for days.
Yes. I love that you brought that up though, because I will say, and this is the last thing this weekend, we can move on and move forward. But one of the things that I really was proud of during my time in corporate, I served as the lead for global employee resource groups at a Fortune 500 company. And one of the things I was incredibly proud of was integrating that aspect of intersectionality into ERG programming. Yes. So it was around the time when there were all those horrific attacks happening against Asian Americans during that time of Stop Asian Hate. And I remember, partnering the Black Employee Resource Group and the AAPI resource group and saying, let's talk about what it feels like to be in this position where people are literally attacking you because of your skin tone or because of your features, because of the group you belong to. And they had an amazing event on that, or being able to pair, the women's employee resource group and the Black employee resource group, the Latinx employee resource group, and talking about Women's History Month, but also bringing up those pay equity issues, also bringing up what each individual group experiences in the workplace, while also uniting as a women's employee resource group. It was a really beautiful practice to be able to let them know you don't have to do events all by yourselves. It also helps share the load and you can be able to tackle some of these things in a way that really touch on the reality for so many people. So I'm a huge fan of just let's all partner together and figure out where the intersections are and see how we can be more powerful together.
And talk about the messy middle, right? Because even in that, right, you bring a Black and Asian group together, and it's like, okay, how are we living similar experiences based on skin tone and these attacks? But at the same time, there is a very big anti-Asian or anti-Black sentiment within those communities as well, too. Exactly. And so how do you find community in spaces where you have to basically mentally dismantle some of the stories that you've been told or experienced, right? So it's a reshaping of community in ways that supremacy doesn't want for it to happen, right? Exactly. Like I said, I could talk about this.
Right, because we could all day, because there's that messy middle is it's a place, but it's so important though. It's so important because it's that aspect of working through the muck of what was in yesteryears, so future generations hopefully won't have to. And won't have to deal with it in such a visceral way. So yes, we could talk about that. The messy
and it's not about the kumbaya all the time.
No,
right?
It's not. And that's the other thing about DEI. People are like, oh, we're all like holding hands and just kumbaya. I'm like, no, there's disagreements. There's disagreements because there's historically things in a group. I can be at the Pride Employee Resource Group and talk about historic racism in the LGBTQI plus community. And that's okay. But there is that aspect where it's not all holding hands, but it is always respect. Yes. It is always coming to the forefront of I'm coming to you with respect, and we're going to respectfully have a conversation about this with the goal of moving forward.
Yeah. That's and what how do we build community from that? Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. One of the reasons why I knew it was time for me to leave corporate is when I had someone tell me, oh, you're in marketing, your job is to make things look pretty. And I was just like, DEI is not pretty. Like, it is not always pretty. And so, that's when I was like, yep, that's my first foot out the door. Christen, what are the things that you do to take care of yourself? Like, how do you fill your cup as you are doing this work?
Oh my goodness. Whew. So I am a huge advocate of filling your own cup. I am a self-care is survival. It is an act of revolution, a firm believer in that. And so some of the ways that I fill my cup definitely are being able to unplug from all devices and technology and get out in nature. I love outdoor activities. I love going on hikes. I love being able to just stop and take in the vastness of the world, which reminds me not only how much work there is to do, but also that I am interconnected in all of it. So being able to unplug and do that is incredibly important. I love to read. I also love to, this is going to be really old school for some people, but hop on a nice phone conversation with a good friend, like on the phone, not a text. Okay, I want to hear your voice. We could do video. We could do that. But being able to be in community with loved ones, family, friends, loved ones, chosen family, who are really just those who fill my cup and pour into me really wonderfully. So really just taking it back to long phone conversations. I love traveling. I grew up as a military kid. My father was in the Air Force for more than 20 years. So I grew up bouncing around from place to place in it. And I like to say that's probably where my diversity, equity, inclusion journey started, because I was exposed to so many cultures, but I have a deep love for traveling and learning other cultures and experiencing other people and just expanding my worldview. And then aside from that, I mean, you can always catch me with a good meal. Okay. You can always get me with a good meal. Find me at a good lunch, brunch, dinner. Okay. Breaking bread is a wonderful way also to bridge gaps. But yes, I also love, just enjoying going out to eat and just having a good time. And then also the arts, anything the arts, a museum, a concert, a dance performance, all of it. It takes me to all the arts, and I'm a happy, happy, happy woman.
You are speaking all my languages, all of them. Matter of fact, this past week, I had a girlfriend. I mean, we've been friends since 3rd grade. I was just like, hey, how are you? Like, just picked up the phone. And yeah, it's just something about that we've lost that I absolutely love and appreciate.
Yes.
So, Christen, if folks wanted to get in contact with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Well, I am on LinkedIn under Christen Smiley. So you can absolutely connect with me on LinkedIn. That's where I put my posts, information, all the things. It's not all about work and DEI stuff. I do definitely focus on wellness and all the aspects of that as well. So I definitely intermingle and show up in a full way on that platform. And also my website as well is also another way that you can contact me. There's a contact form at the bottom of the page. Even if you're just looking to chat, etc. And there's also different links on the page that connect you to my calendar. So you can feel free and book a session and we can have a deeper conversation and really just continue to drive this work forward. That's incredibly important. That isn't going anywhere. It's not going
anywhere.
Just so you know.
Evolve, but it's not going anywhere.
Yes, and I welcome all the new connections. Will be fantastic. Those are the best ways to get in contact with me.
Wonderful. Christen, thank you so much for being with us today. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I knew I wouldn't enjoy this conversation. So I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and we could go on for days and days and days about some of these topics. So thank you so very much.
This has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. The time literally flew by. I know you said, it's the conversation. It really was just a phenomenal conversation. So there's so much we can continue to talk about. And I look forward to continuing to do that. And I'm just incredibly grateful for this opportunity and to be an honored guest on DEI After 5.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Well, being a part of this. And thank you all for joining and tuning in for this week's episode. I hope that you were able to walk away with a few nuggets or had some aha moments of what you can do to start shaping or reshaping your messaging around DEI, because as we said, it's not going anywhere, right? This is here to stay. And so how do you start to do that pivot? How do you start to do that massaging of the message? So that we can continue doing this work forward. So be sure to tune in every Tuesday at 5:15 p.m. right here where you listen to your podcast or on YouTube. And as always, please like, share, subscribe. And until next time, have a good one.